From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Ashley
and Tyler,
a podcast about the teenage experience made by teenagers for teenagers.
Because we all need a place to feel heard. Before we get started, we just wanted to let you know that issues such as homophobia and transphobia come up in this episode. Listen with a friend or a trusted adult.
Hey Tyler, how are you?
Very good. Just a few more weeks to graduation. Ready to go.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yes, very exciting.
We hope you guys really liked the last episode, which was about relationships. There's obviously so much more to say about relationships that can't be confined to just one episode. So we wanted to take this episode to focus not only more on relationships, but specifically teens who identify as LGBTQIA+.
If you aren't familiar, the A in LGBTQIA+ stands for multiple things, including agender, also known as genderless, and aromantic, often shortened to aro, which describes people who experience little to no romantic attraction.
And the A can also stand for asexual, which means people who do not experience sexual attraction towards others. Our first story is from two teens in my dear old state of Ohio, the heart of it all, who identify under the asexual umbrella.
While the majority of teenagers crave romantic or sexual connection with their peers, there are some of us who don't. Whether we are aware of it or not, there's an expectation that everyone ends up with someone, usually of the opposite sex, both sexually and romantically. People who aren't interested in either sexual or romantic relationships often never realize that they don't have to have them, and it is often assumed by allos, or those who do experience attraction, that everyone wants to eventually end up with the one who is meant for them. To give a slightly different perspective of the aro and ace spectrums, I interviewed my friend Lori about their experience.
Hi, I'm Lori.
So Lori, how do you identify yourself? What labels under the ace umbrella have been most helpful to you?
I use aromantic and asexual.
How does being asexual feel to you?
It's sort of a hard concept to explain. Basically, the asexual part of it is that I think sex is gross, and I have no desire to ever have it with someone. The aromanticism is a little bit harder to explain. Basically, I don't have romantic feelings towards people. I don't have crushes or just that realm of feelings. It's a weird concept to explain because I don't think most people outside of the aro-ace community separate the two.
Right.
And I do have platonic feelings or family love, but just nothing romantic.
When did you first consider the possibility that you're aro or ace?
This was at a clarinet section party sophomore year. Somehow we got on the topic of crushes and such, and I said something like, I don't think anyone's hot, and you were just told me that sounds really ace. And I think I decided right then. I was like, oh yeah, that would explain a lot. I think I'm ace.
Yeah. Yep, I remember that. How has your life changed since coming out?
It's been a lot less confusing because prior to knowing about all this, I wouldn't have crushes, or I'd have platonic crushes, which is it's like a crush, but you only want to be friends. So I would, have a platonic crush and be like, is this a crush? Is this not a crush? And now I'm like, oh, that's a platonic crush. I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
So just that vocabulary has been very helpful.
Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of platonic crushes throughout my life, especially in elementary and middle school. And I think if they had been on guys, or if I had known what being gay was earlier, then I would have been like, oh, I'm gay, or oh, I have a crush on this guy.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wish allosexuals or alloromantics, meaning people who are attracted to other people, knew about the ace community?
Just that it exists. It's a pretty rare sexual orientation, and you don't see a whole lot of representation of it in media. So by listening to this, you're aware of it.
Yeah.
Also, something I haven't personally had a problem with this, but it's sort of rude. So if someone tells you they're ace, you're like, oh, what do you feel about sex then? Do you think it's gross, or are you okay with it in some scenarios? That's not a cool thing to ask. It's Like, just
Yeah.
be like, okay, thanks for telling me.
Yeah, coming out can be so vulnerable, and sex is probably the last thing you want to talk about when you're coming out, regardless of your orientation. Do you have any advice for people who may be questioning?
There's so much variety in being ace and aromantic of probably you're not going to feel the same way either of us do. Even like we use very similar labels and we feel things very differently.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the LGBTQ wiki, great for all of the different micro labels and such, but you don't have to use those if you don't want to. And you get to decide how much your like sexual orientation defines who you are. Like for some people, it's a really big deal. For others, it's just a small part of who they are.
Yeah.
And you get to decide that.
Exactly.
That was a really great conversation. While I personally came into contact with the idea of asexuality pretty early on, I also realized that a lot of people don't really understand it. A lot of people don't really, I guess, know asexuality is definitely a spectrum.
I knew what that meant, but I had never met anybody in my real life that like said that they were asexual. I remember reading somewhere that SpongeBob was asexual. According to the creator of the show, which I was just reading recently, SpongeBob is asexual, and he said that he would probably not have a romantic interest or relationship with anyone just because he's a sea sponge, but that was a hotly debated issue.
When I think about asexual or aromantic characters in the media, the only one I can think of like off the top of my head is Todd from BoJack Horseman.
It actually feels nice to finally say it out loud. I am an asexual person. I am asexual.
That's great.
I know that a lot of people talk about how Todd is like very much so good asexual representation because he's kind of clumsy with it. He doesn't really know that it's something that people can be. He thinks that there's maybe something wrong with him. But then he's like, no, this is perfectly valid. This is something that a lot of people experience. Our next story, which comes from San Antonio, Texas, explores this topic more. How LGBTQ plus representation in the media affects queer teens.
Hello, my name is Ava. I have 3 people here today, 3 of my very close friends, and they're going to be talking about their experiences with consuming and just being entertained by queer media and how that's affected them growing up as queer people.
I'm 15, my pronouns are he, they, and I'm bisexual.
I'm 17 years old. My pronouns are they and he, and I'm bisexual and transgender.
I'm 17 years old. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a lesbian.
My favorite LGBTQ plus TV show is Our Flag Means Death. I feel like a lot of new media that's coming out about like LGBT people is just kind of like teen stuff about like gay people being sad, and that's okay, but sometimes I feel like a lot of people get tired of that. But Our Flag Means Death is just kind of a silly little pirate show that has like gay main characters, there's like bisexual people, there's trans representation. It's just got a lot of like good representation in it.
If you were to show me the ways of an aristocrat, I could probably show you a thing or two about being a bloodthirsty pirate.
Wouldn't that be something?
Agreed.
Whoa. What is most effective in bringing in an audience of queer people is that there's multiple like types of representation. So there's not just like one gay character and it's a gay man. There's like a bunch of different types of characters who encompass many different identities. There's also like POC representation, which is really good. There's just a lot of different types of representation and a lot of intersectionality.
My favorite queer movie is The Half of It. I watched it for the first time in 8th grade. It's about a girl who befriends this guy because he's trying to get the girl, and she falls in love with the same girl. I think my favorite character is probably Ellie Chu. I think I relate to her a lot, and I see a lot of myself in her and her struggles and her decision-making and just the role she played with the other characters. To me, the most important and influential part of this movie was the focus on Ellie and Paul's friendship, and not the romance, just the friendship between a queer and a straight character and how they grapple with their different identities and their differences.
What's this?
A letter.
Who writes letters these days?
I thought it seemed romantic.
Can't help you.
I just need a few words, good ones.
I'm not writing to ask her to some girl. It'd be wrong. A letter is personal. It's supposed to be authentic.
That'd be awesome.
No, I can't be you being authentic. Get a thesaurus. Use spell check. Good luck, Romeo.
I think that was really important to me in like becoming comfortable in my queer identity. It's not easy to grow up when you don't really understand what you're thinking or feeling, and there's not like easy access to words or like content explaining it. And I think watching this movie when I was like 13, 14 in 8th grade when it came out spoke to me very personally when I was still struggling with my identity and figuring out what to call myself and how to conduct myself. It really appeared in my life in a time where I really needed the like support and the experiences and like the words to be able to put to what I was feeling.
My favorite queer TV show is Love, Victor. It's a show about a gay kid who comes out and deals with the challenges that come with it.
Victor, I want this as much as you do. But I've been out for a while now, and you... I mean, have you even said the words out loud yet? I'm gay. I'm going to. I am.
Seeing the show made me really be more understanding and made me be able to show more compassion to others and others in different situations especially, and just realizing that like how some people don't have it as good as others and wanting to be in any way more supportive or as supportive as I can to others that are going through an experience like that.
I think it's so important to have movies like Love, Simon, which is just a regular romance movie, but they're gay and they end up with a happy ending and kissing on the Ferris wheel at the end of the movie, which like it just like when you think about other movies that like have gay protagonists in them, like Call Me by Your Name or Mysterious Skin or whatever, they're like very traumatic and like they don't usually end very well. But like Love, Simon, it ends pretty well.
I don't know if people are familiar with the concept of barrier gays, wherein gay characters in shows often, almost always, either get this really bad ending or they die. I think that's also so important to really have these like happy love stories, like to have queer people just existing as something that is beyond just queer, like to have three-dimensional characters that aren't just the token gay friend.
We have a special guest joining us now. Their name is Orion.
Hi, Orion.
Hey, guys.
We're so excited to have you with us. So the last segment was all about representation of LGBTQ plus people and characters in the media and how important that is. While On Our Minds has covered some LGBTQ issues, the podcast has not included many stories from trans teens, and we feel like that's an important conversation to have.
I love talking about this, so I'm happy you guys have had me on.
So, Orion, are you comfortable sharing just a little bit about your background and your identity?
Absolutely. So, I might start off like telling how I found out I was trans. I had just gotten my hair cut from about like waist length. It was really long. And I was like, I just want to change. I want it off my neck. I was really not good at taking care of it. And I didn't know I was trans at the time, but afterwards I went to get my ears pierced at a tattoo parlor in my mall. And the attendant, they said, what do they want to get done today? And that use of they instead of she, it felt different and it felt a lot more right than she ever felt to me. So I've gone through a ton of different labels. I identified as a gender for a while, but then as time went on, I felt more comfortable identifying as a trans man.
Can I ask, like, how you kind of explored these different kinds of identities and, like, I guess where, like, your sources of information came from?
I did see a lot on the internet. I was using Tumblr for a while, so that's kind of how I got, like, my initial education, but as well as I had a trans friend growing up. We lost contact, but he was really sure of himself really early on, and that kind of let me lean on him for any questions that I had, and he was super helpful with that.
What kind of response did you get from people when you came out?
I feel like I've gotten a pretty mixed response. My boss, I work at a ice cream place, and he was super open about it. He changed my name in the system without me even asking him. He was like, he's really good with using my name and pronouns. So that was a really refreshing experience. My parents, however, were a bit more hesitant, to say the least, When I was about 14, 15, I went down to the garage to tell them that, hey, I use they, them pronouns. And they were like, oh, it's just a phase. But as I've, stuck with it and came out to my entire family, which is a Southern family, mainly conservative, and that actually went well. My parents have very much warmed up to using my new name and pronouns.
So I know you talked about like your family, and I was wondering, I guess expanding the community, how LGBTQ plus affirming is your school?
So I live in Florida, right? And Florida, especially recently, has been a very tricky subject when talking about trans issues. I have a lot of trans friends myself at school, and I think that's an incredible resource. But there's also kids that have openly called me slurs. So it's a really mixed bag, but with school and like the administration, most teachers, if you tell them like your name and pronouns, they will go with it.
I don't know that much about Florida. I think but Florida recently passed the Don't Say Gay bill, right?
House Bill 1557, or the Don't Say Gay bill, or the Parental Rights and Education Act. It restricts the discussion of gender identity and like sexual orientation in classes 3rd grade and down, but also says or any time that it would be inappropriate. So that's vague enough to go up into high school, and it makes it really hard to discuss about queer matters, especially since like you're in high school, you're going through puberty, you're discovering yourself, and in this such an important time of like self-discovery.
And it doesn't stop gay kids from being gay.
Yeah, no, like it's just making it a lot less safe. School is supposed to be a safe space where you're meant to learn how to do things safely, but you're leaving kids to go on the internet and research about this.
With all this stuff going on, be it in politics and in schools and in the world in general, it seems like it can get very overwhelming. How have these, policies taken an effect on your mental health?
It's kind of hard to mention, but I'm scared. I'm scared for being who I am. I'm scared of like going to transition and telling people that I'm trans. It's terrifying that as many people hate me for being who I am as they do.
I'm so sorry, Orion.
It's all right. Sorry I got emotional.
No, you're completely valid in that. So I think that as trans allies, there's always this question of what can we do to help support our trans friends and the trans people in our lives.
I feel like just listen to us. Listen to, when we say our names, ask our pronouns. I've had some people ask, like, I don't know if it's okay to ask your pronouns. Please, we absolutely love that. And we understand if you mess it up 1 or 2 times, or like, if we see you're trying, like, that's so much support already.
How has your trans identity factored into your own perception of self, and how has it affected your relationships with other people?
I feel like me being trans has affected my self-perception a lot when it comes to relationships. I worry that if they'll see me as a real man or just a woman with short hair. I wonder if they'll see me as attractive, just because being trans, I obviously don't fit into the conventionally attractive little box. So that's been a really tough hurdle that I've now personally conquered, because I'm seeing myself as attractive and powerful and masculine and feminine and everything in between, and as one whole person who is wonderful in their own way.
Is there anything else that you want people to know about your experience, or any advice that you have for other trans teens?
Don't stop being yourself. It's really scary out there right now. But being trans and accepting who I am has been the most empowering and freeing experience. And I wish for every other trans teen or just trans youth that you can experience what I've experienced and have a welcoming and supportive friend group and support system. My cousin, they're also trans, and they live in Tennessee, which also has a lot of these anti-trans legislation. Mm-hmm. They are not legally able to transition. And I feel like it makes me even more angry than it does that it's not just affecting me, but also my family. And it's like really upsetting. But I really like the quote that says, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. And I think that's really important for trans kids.
Orion, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. And thank you so much for being so vulnerable. We always appreciate it. And Clearly, you have a lot of really important things to say, and I thank you for giving us a chance to hear them.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say them.
Up next, an episode with our South by Southwest EDU interviews, including Hank Green
and former U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. Both Hank Green and Joy Harjo got the advice, be yourself, when they were young adults. In our interviews, they share what that phrase, be yourself, meant to them then and now.
Today's segments are produced by Megan from Centerville, Ohio.
Ava from San Antonio, Texas. This episode was produced by youth media producer Chris Schwalm and production assistant Mercedes Ezeji, with help from lead podcast producer Briget Ganske.
Editorial director Marie Cusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Jackson Teedens.
Additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
On Our Minds is supported by the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.